mythologies transfer certain values to the next generation, certain ideas about how we operate, how the society operates, what's expected of you, how you define your role in the society and what your obligations are in that society, and what the standards that are set. And that's mythology, that's what it was. It was a way of one generation telling the next generation, this is how you fit, this is how it works, and doing it in a storytelling way as it has related to the past in an exotic location, in an exotic world where the gods and the mortals all intermingle, and the mysterious and the mundane are both there together. It gave it a context that allowed people to come to their adulthood with a particular mindset that fit into society and allowed it to work. And I was very interested in that. And I'd always been very fascinated with Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon as a child, and seeing a lot of serials, and they were all very exciting.
Interactive audio tour at the National Air and Space Museum is a relative rating the milestones of flight travel. If you would like to take an interactive audio tour, please go to the interactive audio tour booth, the milestones of flight travel.
Because I on the side, been kind of thinking about this and pondering over the fact that the Western was a modern mythology, and that we had lost that in the 60s, which is about when I was in film school. And I was saying, isn't it interesting that we've lost our mythology? And I couldn't think of anything that has replaced it. So I became very fascinated with how do we replace this mythology that has drifted out of fashion of the Western. And one of the prime issues of mythology was that it was always on the frontier. It was always over the hill. It was always in this mysterious place where anything can happen. So you could deal with metaphor and that sort of thing. I said, well, the only place we got left is space.
Screenwriter does it differently. You know, George always said that he knew where the three movies were going. He had a very clear idea in his head of what the overall structure of the trilogy was.
I wrote for 2 years, and at the time I would work from 9 o'clock in the morning until about 6:30 at night. I would spend part of my day doing research. I would say mostly reading history, reading myths, reading books about myths, and that sort of thing. One of the big influences in my life was Kurosawa, who made a lot of very interesting films in the 50s and 60s. And I was very intrigued by a lot of his movies because they were samurai movies, you know, feudal Japan. The look of them was very exotic. I hadn't been exposed to that very much, and I found it very interesting that nothing was explained. It was just you're thrown into this world, and obviously you know about feudal Japan, that it makes sense to you, but if you're not, it's like you're watching this very exotic, strange thing with strange customs and strange look. And I think that influenced me a great deal in working in science fiction, because I was able to get around the idea that you have to explain everything or understand what everything is.
Lucas has always understood that films, whatever their technology, have to be driven by character and story. And I think that that's where a lot of other people have fallen by the wayside.
I was trying to take certain mythological principles and apply them into a story. Ultimately, I had to abandon that and just simply write the story. And I found that when I started to write the story, and then I went back and read it, and I started applying it against the sort of principles that I was trying to work with originally, they were all there.
it was all on that page. I couldn't imagine how the special effects would be, but I thought the humor was there, and the kind of, it just, everything that it is to people, I thought was on the page.
It was pretty much a fairy tale kind of formula. There was a princess, there was a callow youth, there was a wise old warrior in the form of Alec Guinness, and there was the rapscallion kind of rowdy character that I played.
Luke starts out as a country boy, a farm kid, and is transformed over the course of the first film into a hero who saves the whole galaxy. And, you know, no one thinks he could do it. He's like Sergeant York, you know, he's a country bumpkin, but he's got a great eye.
Star Wars.
In fact, he has a mentor, you know, which is always the case in a wizard or a mentor and these kind of myths. And that's Ben Kenobi. And Ben Kenobi helps Luke, the country bumpkin, transform himself into this hero. And the way he does it is by letting him hear those things which are powerful in himself. And that's the Force.
How did your father die? A young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father. Now the Jedi are all but extinct. Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force. The Force? And the Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
And that's a kind of pattern that's repeated in all the world's religions and all the world's mythology, which is there is a natural energy which can guide you through life if you are able to get in touch with it.
Bulky religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
You don't believe in the Force, do you?
Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything. There's no mystical energy field that controls my destiny.
I was trying to take some of the similar aspects of all religions and dealing with it as more of a psychological need the human animal needs in order to deal with the issues of faith and spirituality, and try to see if I could find a common denominator that would cover all of humanity and not deal specifically with any kind of religion, but to create a kind of overview of man's relationship to spirituality, and then put that into a film and try to use that context that could be used in relationship to other religions, so that religions could attach themselves to it and say, see, this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. Because what it really has to do with getting young people to begin to identify with some kind of spiritual experience.
I can't. It's too big. Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? You must feel the force around you. Between you, me, the flea, the clock, everywhere. Yes, and even between your head and the ship.
Well, George, being the writer, producer, and creator of it, he had to hire people that in a way could collaborate with him.
Having created the storyline and the images and knowing exactly what he wants, that's it. And he just hires good actors and moves them to it.
He communicated to those who worked with him, whether it be from props to art director to special effects to music, very well. And it was very symphonic quality with everybody.
So what I did is I hired Ralph McQuarrie to come in and do some conceptual drawings of the scenes that I had written.
He dropped by one evening with a group of people and we looked at my slides that I'd done with various things that were science fiction oriented. And we talked about this film that he was planning to do, a sort of huge galactic war that took place between planets and stars and the galaxy, all of which sounded very far-fetched to me and exciting.
I have a picture in my head of what I want, and I tell Ralph what I want, and he paints that picture. And then that picture is the picture that everybody uses. And I go to the art department and I say, I want the set and the thing to look just like this, so make it look just like that. So they do, they make it look exactly like that. I set the camera up in exactly the same position and I shoot it just the way I described it originally.
Illustrations of the production design were available. It gave us a sense of the scale of the whole thing, of the depth and the originality of the conception.
Now I want two robots. I want one to look kind of like a human, metallic, kind of very artistically designed, and then I want another one that's very serviceable, that's kind of short, and is much more mechanical and technical looking, but is more like a puppy dog in nature.
In my sketches for 3PO, I was inspired by this Ernst Trova sculpture, which was quite popular back in those days. He would do these lovely everyman figure, and it was gorgeously contoured and usually like made out of brass. R2-D2 wanted to be a little squatty worker robot, like a little Swiss Army knife.
Then we take that, and I say, now let's put that into a context. You know, we're going to put them on a mountain overlooking a city, and then they do an actual final rendering of that.
It was the only way you could kind of see what the big picture was going to be, you know. Concept paintings kind of tell you what's the overall vision of what this scene would look like to the director, because of course Ralph McQuarrie and George Lucas worked close together even before we even formed ILM.
The one thing that Kurosawa prided himself was to create a sense of immaculate reality. And I took that idea and I said, I'm going to take into Star Wars and I'm going to create this sense of immaculate reality. And I'm going to take everything as if it's normal. And I wanted to make sure that it was an environment that was very old and used. And by the way, our real world is, the way we do it. You know, there's junk everywhere. There's, you know, some things are fixed up to be really nice and some things aren't.
There were spaceships and land speeders and sand crawlers and things like that. It was pretty much every sequence of the film was represented by some kind of model. And George wanted them to be the beat-up hot rod ships that were assembled from spare parts and held together with baling wire and the rest of the fleet.
What a piece of junk! So make 0.5 past light speed. She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, kid. I made a lot of special modifications myself. But we're a little rushed, so if you'll just get on board, we'll get out of here.
The only problem with the Millennium Falcon was that no one had figured out how to fly it. That there were an array of switches and dials and a few short levers. And the first question I had to the production designer and to George was, how do you fly this thing? And everybody went, you just flip the switches. Well, this was a low-budget picture, and many of the switches had been ordered because it was slightly cheaper without the springs which hold the switch in its engaged position. So you'd see a scene where I'd run over and flip 3 switches, and they would go. And finally, I think we replaced the most critical ones with the more expensive switches with the springs.
George would be very descriptive about what he wanted. And it was very easy to take George's, to listen to George and draw what he was describing. He was very articulate and very descriptive in you know, what he wanted. Most of the technical aspects of storyboarding I learned on the job, but George had done a very interesting thing with the space battles. He had found World War II films, and he had cut these together to create the space battles before we ever shot a frame of film. Things I did was just sit down with George. We'd go through his cut, his black and white do it. He'd say, okay, there is a TIE Fighter. And it needs to come in, it needs to make a strafing run on this Millennium Falcon. And that was really my first experience with film.
Well, along with the Western motif, and along with trying to say, well, if we were to take mythology, who are the heroes of today? Who are the knights in shining armor? Who are the gunslingers? Who are the hero as warrior figure? Where does that fit? And today it is the pilot. That figure of combat pilot are very significant in our culture, and they are the highly educated, highly admired warriors of the present and possibly future.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
Sets we worked on, as well as not having all of the visual elements involved, didn't have any sound, or they had the sound of wood being dragged on a concrete stage floor when these giant doors would open, for instance. And when you see the film, you'll see very specific sound effects which were created to give a sense of reality to those. But we'd only hear cursing grips and scraping wood.
Now, I look at the soundtrack, I look at sound effects and sounds as a kind of musical experience. Music symphony orchestras are the most sophisticated version of that, and they all need to play together. So when I was working on the film, I was very focused on what kind of music was going to go in there, and I would use temp tracks of the kinds of things I wanted and the kinds of sounds I wanted, so that Ben Burtt could cut the sound effects to be sympathetic to what was going on in the music track.
I was actually given a copy of the script as it existed at that time. And this was about a year before they were actually going into shooting. So this was an earlier draft of the script. They were still working on it. So they gave me a tape recorder and a microphone. And that was as sophisticated as the technology got at that time. And I operated out of my apartment, and I just began collecting sounds. And we've always found that the sound is really the secret weapon behind these films, that you can spend a lot of time and money doing fabulous visuals, which dazzle the eye and take you to new places and see things you've never seen before. But it's the sound which grounds it in a reality base that fools you into believing that these illusions are real.
Station 7 far away.
That's why I love sound, because you can perform that kind of magic. You can give the film a sense of reality that it would not have any other way.
And of course, the film score that John Williams composed gave a richness and a scale to the whole production that was really remarkable.
I actually met Johnny Williams through Steve Spielberg. I was looking for a composer who could do symphonic scores, but I was doing an old-fashioned, a grand symphonic score, and I needed somebody that was really good in that idiom. Steven had just finished doing Jaws with Johnny Williams, so I decided that after talking to him that he was perfect. So that happened while I was shooting the picture. As soon as I came back, I talked to him at the beginning of this trilogy, and at least I thought we had a kind of Saturday afternoon popcorn with the kids at the movies kind of attraction. And I never really suspected it would get as deeply into the sort of psyche of the film watchers in the way that it has.
And so a dialogue did develop, which over the course of the subsequent films did help a great deal in orchestrating, really, the music and the sound effects together, so that we weren't always trying to say or do exactly the same thing.
Temp tracks that you can add words, consistent with the language, change the, translate it in essence.
There's a moment in the movie Jedi that many people always seem to remember, and remember the sound at that moment. And it's really a musical moment. It's when Luke and Darth Vader finally tackle one another in the lightsaber battle. And John Williams does really this fabulous cue, which has some very spiritual sounding voices, choral voices in it. Of course, you've got the lightsabers going there and harmony with it, but it's that combination of sound and really music which is dominating that moment, which brings out this emotional reaction in the audience.
If you will not turn to the dark side, then perhaps she will.
Film and music are linked forever, aren't they? We knew, even when we had silent films, we knew we had to have music, and we had a pianist or an orchestra in the pit doing something. And George Lucas's films are not unique in that sense, but for me, they presented unique opportunities to create music. In fact, his movies have screamed to have a strong musical partner, and as a result of this, given me some of the best roles to put in an actor's parlance that I could find.
The first time I saw the completed film was at the North Point Theater in San Francisco.
I was overwhelmed by it. I mean, when it first started, just seeing the rocket ship come over and just never end, I thought, wow, what a ride this is going to be.
And the sheer originality of that visual image blew everyone away right in the first 3 minutes.
It was really almost a cheerful experience, really it was, to see it the first time, to see how it had really come on.
We were in there for 4 hours. We come outside and there are people on the sidewalk asking us for autographs, which was completely out of the blue, for a bunch of guys who sit around at tables all day and draw.
The music plays, and it gives you an oral and spiritual kind of center, gravity. You know where you are emotionally, you know where you are spiritually. You're in a human place. And that big mythological interconnection aspect must be the reason why it's so interesting and has lasted so long.
I was amazed at anybody that's still going strong.